Bill Gates, genius, billionaire.
You kind of half telling me, though, that you're not in it for the money?
I don't think anyone at the company's in it for the money.
Entrepreneur. But what if I told you this was a lie?
You can still see through those thick, pretentious glasses, you psychopathic, unimaginative criminal. You stole my software, and I'm gonna sue you for every cent that you have ever made.
A lie spread by the man himself to coerce the media to twist in his favor. From buying whole news outlets to hide the truth, to the puzzling push of vaccines.
We don't know if these vaccines will work.
An unsettling amount of farmland purchases, and the worst of all, his relationship with...
I had dinners with him. I regret doing that.
It was reported that you continued to meet with him over several years, and that, in other words, a number of meetings. What did you do when you found out about his background?
Well,
this is the story how a nerdy novel kid turned evil billionaire. Why is he putting his greedy little hands on seemingly everything nowadays? To do this, we'll have to understand his story, and the evil truth will shock you. Today, we will discuss exactly how Bill Gates, the lowly trust fund kid, made his billions and his plans for the future, and it might get scary. William Henry Gates was born on October 28, 1955, in Seattle, Washington, USA, to his father, William H. Gates Sr., a prominent lawyer, and his mother, Mary Maxwell Gates, a businesswoman and civics leader. Throughout his early years, unlike other kids, Bill spent many hours poring over reference books such as the Encyclopedia. Around the age of 11 or 12, his parents began to have concerns about his behavior. He was doing well in school, but he seemed bored and even withdrawn at times. When Bill turned 13, his parents enrolled him at Seattle's exclusive preparatory Lakeside School. He blossomed in nearly all his subjects, excelling in math and science. He also had a special ability to focus on one thing and be the best at it. For him, it was when he first laid his eyes on the first computer. Although this was quickly shut down as he was put into sports by his parents, playing football. Gates knew he wasn't made for this. He would often ask his parents for money, not to buy food or get new shoes, but to get access to computer time. You see, computers at a time like this, didn't exist. And Gates, although he may have hidden his life when he was younger, he was quite wealthy as both of his parents had stable jobs and they were able to cater to his passion. This was also a rare opportunity. In the late 1960s, few schools had access to these computer terminals. Gates was instantly drawn to the machine. He began learning programming, even with no clear instructions, and was eager that school excused him from math classes so he could pursue his new passion. In his book, Gates recalls using a computer for the first time at school and writing his first computer program, a game of tic-tac-toe, at the age of 13. "I made a lot of errors trying to figure that out," he wrote. A game of tic-tac-toe is so simple, even kids learn it quickly, but it felt like a triumph to get a machine to do it. It's where he would meet Paul Allen, who plays a pivotal role in Bill's life. Not because they were great partners who built a billion-dollar company together, but how Bill used his wit to manipulate Paul, even to the day of his inevitable demise. Paul Allen, who was 2 years above him as a senior, the pair became fast friends, bonding over their common enthusiasm for computers and spending much of their free time working together on programs, but were limited due to the school's regulation of screen time per person. So, what would two teenagers obsessed with coding do? Gates and Allen had their school privileges revoked for taking advantage of software glitches to obtain free computer time. The two later went to build Trafo data, which measured road traffic by vehicles. 1972, he was soon offered an opportunity to demonstrate their traffic data processor to the officials from the city of Seattle. Gates had spent weeks on the project to get this to work. The first demo, however, did not go as planned. The device failed to work properly in front front of city employees. Eventually, they did get the device working and managed to make a few sales. When I mean a few sales, at the age of 17, Gates was already worth a staggering $20,000, which may not sound like a lot of money today, but trust me, that was worth a lot more back in 1972. Converted to today's money, he was worth around $153,000. Paul and Gates soon left school. He wasn't sure what he was gonna do, but he knew school just was not his way. He had just got a glimpse of real success, and he was coming back for a huge stake of the pie. In the fall of 1973, he enrolled at Harvard College. His parents were proud. Harvard was a traditional path to success, and at least initially, it seemed that Gates was following the conventional route that they had envisioned for him. But it was actually a lie. You see, at Harvard, Gates' passion for computers continued to show. He was less interested in following a set college degree program with all these different classes and really didn't want to deal with any of that. He did not declare a major and showed little enthusiasm for attending these classes. Far more exciting to him were the projects that he schemed about with Paul Allen, who remained his close friend. In the summer of 1974, after his sophomore year, Gates got a job at Honeywell in Massachusetts. Not coincidentally, Honeywell also hired Paul Allen that summer. Allen had indeed dropped out of Washington State and moved back to Boston to work as a programmer, largely so he could get nearer to Gates and they could actually collaborate. The pair then spent that summer of 1974 getting first-hand experience in the tech industry. This is where Bill had coined the phrase by saying,
What were your views?
Well, Paul Allen, my co-founder, and I wrote down that we see a computer on every desk and in every home. We saw the microprocessor, the chip that drives it, improving so rapidly that any access to information or processing of information would move into the PC, and it would be the tool of the information age.
Gates knew a different era was coming, an era where a computer would be on every desk and table. In January 1975, the breakthrough they were waiting for had arrived. The premier issue of Popular Electronics magazine that month featured a cover story on the MITS Altair 8800. Both he and Gates were electrified by the sight of one of the few and first microcomputers. They immediately recognized that the Altair would need software. At the time, there was no easy way for hobbyists to program the Altair, and here lay the opportunity. Within days, Gates contacted Micro Instrumentation and Telemetry Systems, or MITS for short, to show them a revelation they had made. They boldly claimed that he and Allen had developed a version of the basic language for the new computer. In reality, they had written 0 lines of Altair basic code, but they had enormous confidence in their abilities, built on all those years of programming since Lakeside. MITS founder Ed Roberts was interested and asked them to demonstrate this basic. Gates and Allen now had to scramble for answers to actually build what they had promised. For the next few weeks in early 1975, the two friends worked frantically. Allen flew to Albuquerque with a paper tape on their basic interpreter in hand. He loaded the program onto the Altair 8800 at MITS. To everyone's relief and perhaps surprise, unlike his failed demonstration with the Traco data, the Altair Basic worked on the first try, correctly running a sample program. MITS agreed to distribute the Altair Basic. At 19 years old, Gates saw that their long-nurtured dream of starting a software company was now within reach. He decided to take a leave of absence from Harvard and join Allen in New Mexico to formally start their career. Gates later said, "If things hadn't worked out, I could have always gone back to school." On April 4th, 1975, Bill Gates and Paul Allen officially co-founded Microsoft, a software company dedicated to the emerging personal computer market. Gates was just 19 and Allen was 22. They initially spelled it Microsoft, a combination of microcomputer and software, but later they ended up just getting rid of the hyphen entirely. And this is where IBM, which was the current biggest computer company, approaches them and offers them a royalty if they could build a software for them. By 1981, the computer market explodes, and Microsoft was getting offers from the biggest companies. This was the dream Bill always wanted. Gates became an instant multimillionaire. He owned 45% of the shares, so when the stock exploded, so did his net worth. This also had brought some unwanted attention. Steve Jobs, the charismatic freethinker who contrasts Bill, wasn't born rich, but rather had to recycle in order to survive and ate from shelters. The guy who built his company in a garage. Or the guy that was given everything on a silver platter. You see, throughout this narrative, this has been told through the mouth of Gates and his loved ones. But the truth is, he was privileged, to say the least. Do you think IBM offered Bill a job just because he was a genius? Bill's mother, Mary Maxwell Gates, she served on the same United Way board as John Opel, who was the CEO of IBM. When Bill spent almost all of his money to start Microsoft, guess who helped him? His parents. Even as a child, Lakeside School was a private school, and Bill's parents were known to be part of the wealthy class. So that was the only reason why Bill had access to computers at the young age of 13. Now let's picture this with Steve Jobs. With working to middle-class adoptive parents who were not educated and had no access to technology till his young and adult years, safe to say the two did not mix well. And it was well precedented, even in calls, Jobs never did respect Gates. Now this may paint Bill as being attacked by Jobs, but it was really the other way around, as Bill saw the invention of the Apple computer.
It does all the things you'd expect a business computer to do. It does a lot of things you wouldn't expect a business computer to do.
He soon released Windows 1, and Jobs called it theft, as it was a complete ripoff of the Apple computer he spent years building.
Hello, I'm Bill Gates, chairman of Microsoft. In this video, you're going to see the future. Windows.
Apple then went on to sue Microsoft, claiming it violated copyrights by copying the look and feel of the Macintosh GUI. And this wasn't even the first time Gates was sued. He actually had built a reputation for it. This is where we reintroduce Paul Allen. You see, as Microsoft was growing in 1982, Paul Allen was diagnosed with Hodgkin's lymphoma. Bill saw this as a weakness. He schemed with other co-founders on a way to get Allen out of the race, so then he owned a significant stake in Microsoft. As Paul recalled, I heard Bill and Steve Ballmer talking in Bill's office, and they were plotting to reduce my share in the company by issuing more options to themselves. Even though he was one of the original founders, similar to Mark Zuckerberg and Eduardo Saverin.
An ambush. First I thought he was joking, giving me more contracts to sign. But then I started reading it. In all honesty, I thought they were.
Sorry? He's wired in.
Is he?
Yes.
No, you're still wired in? You issued 24 million new shares of stock.
You were told that if new investors came
How much
along...
were your shares diluted? How much were his?
What was Mr. Zuckerberg's ownership share diluted down to?
It wasn't.
What was Mr. Moskowitz's ownership share diluted
wasn't.
down to? What was Sean Parker's ownership share diluted down to?
It wasn't.
What was Peter Thiel's ownership share diluted down to?
It wasn't.
And what was your ownership share diluted down to?
0.03%.
They were able to dilute Saverin's equity by making him sign papers that allowed Zuck to control his shares and ultimately dilute them. Allen wrote in his memoir, I helped start the company and was still an active member of management, yet they were scheming to rip me off. It was mercenary behavior. Paul, even though he was battling cancer, was planning on suing. Gates knew he would lose and let him retain his stock. Another time is when Microsoft was battling with the United States due to their monopolized system. They claim Microsoft was illegally maintaining a monopoly in the PC operating systems market, crushing competitors, especially Netscape Navigator and Apple, by bundling Internet Explorer with Windows. So consumers were forced to use Windows, or they would lose access to all their progress. This is where the father of Bill would step in, as he was a prominent lawyer and helped Bill get out of any long-term trouble. Once again, cementing that Bill was a trust fund kid with access to resources that nobody else had. Well, there was one thing that his father could not help him get out of. In 2004, the European Commission fined Microsoft for a record $497 million for abusing its dominant market position by buying out other companies. Although this would make the company be put down and let companies like Apple rise, this honestly didn't even matter to Bill anymore. His net worth was approximately at $46.6 billion, so this was literally pocket change to him. And according to Forbes, which we all pretty much have probably heard of before, with their annual list of billionaires coming out, Bill Gates was the single richest person in the world. He also met Melinda French, who was a marketing manager for his company. They soon married and boom, perfect. Billionaire, got married, everything is all glamorous. So happily ever after, right? No. And the reason is quite unsettling. You see, despite running a huge charity, which was more of a cover-up to hide his wrongdoings, reports had surfaced that Gates had a pattern of making advances towards women who worked for him, creating an uncomfortable workplace environment. According to a detailed New York Times investigation, Gates, at least on a few occasions, pursued female employees at Microsoft and at the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation.
Street Journal and the New York Times suggest that the issue started some time ago.
Microsoft founder Bill Gates facing allegations of inappropriate conduct as he and soon-to-be ex-wife Melinda French Gates finalized their multi-billion-dollar divorce. The New York Times and Wall Street Journal reporting Bill Gates allegedly pursued relationships with several employees prior to his wife of 27 years filing for divorce.
This was all while he was still married to Melinda. For example, in 2006, he attended a presentation by a Microsoft employee, then emailed her asking her to dinner, adding, "If this makes you uncomfortable, pretend it never happened." But if that behavior wasn't concerning enough, Melinda Gates had voiced her opinion and the discomfort with how her husband interacted with the female staff. But Bill's controversy does not stop there with who he meets, which we'll honestly get back there in a second, but it's also about what he controls. In more recent years, Gates has been quietly buying up massive swaths of US farmland, over 270,000 acres, making him the largest private farmland owner in America. He claims it's for sustainable farming, but critics question why a tech billionaire with no agricultural background would invest so heavily in something so unrelated to his expertise, especially when food systems like technology influence billions of lives.
That's about a square yard of maize, and it's like the maize that's grown in East Africa, where of course almost all the farmers have very small plots of land.
And then there's the vaccine crusade, which intensified during the global pandemic. While some praised his efforts to fund vaccine development, others raised alarms over his influence and control that he exerted over the global health policy, which often outpaced governments.
We were just doing some digging, and we see that he actually sold a lot of those shares at how much profit was that?
10x. So he invested $55 million in BioNTech back in 2019. And it's now worth north of $550 million.
Many questioned if Gates' sudden rise as the face of public health was truly philanthropic or another play for more control, and how Bill Gates' stretch reached way beyond the tech world. But here's what's truly unsettling. This is not random at all. Gates isn't just diversifying investments. He's quietly positioning himself at the center of food.
I did this video warning you about Bill Gates' product Appeal that's being sprayed on even organic fruits and vegetables, even though the product is made from non-organic fruits and vegetables.
Medicine, education, and media control the land, you control the food, control the vaccine, and you control the bodies, control the news, and you control the narrative. This isn't just a business, it looks more like a long-term plan to consolidate power under the disguise of philanthropy. And the deeper you dig, the more it feels like something much darker is truly unfolding behind the scenes. But if it could not get any worse for Bill Gates, J.E., the man known for, well, a lot.
Would you raise your hand, please? Do you solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give in the matter now pending shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, ma'am. Would you please state your full name?
I'm Jeffrey Edward Epstein, and my residence address is 6100 Red Hook Boulevard in Virgin Islands.
Have you ever been convicted of a crime?
Yes.
Billionaire Jeffrey Epstein has been arrested on new trafficking charges. A source tells CBS 4 federal agents took him into custody yesterday at a New Jersey airport.
Gates met with J.E. multiple times in the 2010s, even after Epstein's 2008 conviction for soliciting prostitution from a minor. Gates dined at Epstein's Manhattan townhouse on several occasions, and even spent an overnight stay at Epstein's New York mansion in 2013.
It was reported at that time that you had a number of meetings with Jeffrey Epstein. When you met him 10 years ago, he was convicted of soliciting prostitution from minors. What did you know about him when you were meeting with him, as you've said yourself, in the hopes of raising money?
You know, I had dinners with him. I regret doing that.
Notably, Melinda Gates also met Epstein briefly in 2013 and was reportedly disturbed by his persona. She warned Bill to stay away from Epstein. Despite her warnings, Gates continued to contact Epstein for some time, a decision that Melinda later described as having strained their marriage and contributed to her seeking a divorce lawyer in 2019. Overseers questioned why Gates, one of the most prominent philanthropists, would honestly associate with him. Gates downplayed the relationship, insisting in a 2019 statement after the story broke that, "I met him. I didn't have any business relationship or friendship with him, and the meetings were about philanthropy."
He had relationships with people he said, you know, would give to global health, which is a interest I have. You know, not nearly enough philanthropy goes in that direction.
Which may be true, but there's a lot of evidence showing otherwise. And as if this wasn't enough, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, a charity that's supposed to help the less unfortunate, or I guess as what it preaches, is more of a cover-up to just influence the media. The Gates Foundation has also been criticized for its educational initiatives and influence on the educational policy. In the 2000s, Gates spent over $2 billion on a campaign to break up large public schools into smaller schools, only to abandon the effort a few years later when it didn't move the needle as much on student outcomes, whatever that means. Dozens of schools have been restructured, had to close, or revert due to the sudden funding pullback, which honestly just doesn't make any sense. Like, what was the reason for even dumping all the money if you're just gonna pull it back out? Definitely raises some alarms to me. And like we mentioned earlier, during the pandemic, Bill bought over 2,000 acres of farmland, not to help the less fortunate, but because it was cheap, which then ultimately affected the economy and caused the housing market to rise, which impacted millions of individuals. Bill initially tried to hide this by buying under multiple aliases, but eventually got exposed, and he called it a good business investment. And finally, Bill Gates has put $319 million into news outlets to spread positive news about him, which is why this video is so important. It covers the truth of who Bill Gates really is, not media just pushing some guy because he paid them and spreading all positive news and just spreading a bunch of propaganda. Bill created the foundation to just hide all the malicious things he's done in his life, and these things had to be exposed and investigated. There's probably a lot more we honestly don't know. In short, the quote by Andrew Carnegie explains the method Bill uses to trick the media. You can make your money as ruthlessly as possible, as long as you do philanthropy afterward. So the next time you see Bill Gates on the cover of a magazine or praised on the news for donating millions to some cause, ask yourself, who really benefits? Because behind the polished image, behind the billion-dollar donations, behind the so-called genius entrepreneur is a man who leveraged privilege, dodged accountability, silenced criticism with money, and built an empire, not just on code, but on manipulation, monopoly, and media control.